Hi everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. And this week my first question comes to me from Dinah Cat Loves Me, who says, I've been hearing the cliche term the great debate quite a bit lately, including at least twice in this video. What's so great about it? Most of the debates are hopeless stupidity versus logic and reason. Do you really think the great debate is a fair characterization? I don't know if the great debate is a fair characterization. As you said, many of the actual debates tend to be one-sided. And really, no matter which side you're on, whether you're on the non-religious side or the religious side, you probably think that the argument is one-sided. I mean, you either think that if you're, like, say, a Christian, you think, well, the Christian guy beat that atheist to death, man. He made that atheist look like a fool. That atheist couldn't answer any of his questions. And if you're an atheist or, a non-Christian, more on the rational, scientifically minded side, you probably say the same thing about the religious guy. I mean, he's an idiot. He has no understanding of science. His position is based completely on ignorance and deception and dishonesty. And, and I happen to think that if you're saying that, you would be right. But the point is, the perception of the debate from both sides is that it's one-sided and that it favors their side. So no, I don't know if great debate would be the best thing to call it. But then again, it's something to call it. It's a verbal shorthand. It's just a name. It's a way of referring to it without having to say the discussion that goes on between atheists and theists that is carried out on the internet and on, it's just a much quicker way to refer to it. And once the expression becomes an idiom, as I kind of think it has, at least within the atheist community, I mean, people, who have nothing to do and no interest in the religion versus atheism arguments might not recognize that that's what you're referring to if you say the great debate. It's mostly an insular term within our community. But once it becomes an idiom like that, the actual literal meaning of it becomes less important. It just becomes a term that refers to that thing rather than something that's meant to describe that thing. So I don't really have a problem with it. It's just a shorthand term to refer to something that we talk about a lot, and in that way it's useful. Brad Baumander. Hi Steve, what superhero do you think is unappreciated by the mainstream? My pick would be Captain Marvel, aka Shazam. He was one of the first superheroes ever, and for a short time in the 50s was outselling Superman. I know that, and actually, I would probably go with you on that. I would pick Captain Marvel. I think the original Captain Marvel, originally the Fawcett Captain Marvel, now he's owned by DC. You'd have to say the DC Captain Marvel. I love that character. Billy Batson. He says Shazam, and he becomes Captain Marvel, and it is like a bit of a Superman ripoff. I mean, the look of the character, the powers, is very similar. And yeah, not only did Captain Marvel outsell Superman for many years, but as you probably know, since you asked the question and you seem to know your shit about Captain Marvel, I mean, DC and Fawcett, the original publisher of Captain Marvel, were in a lawsuit for forever over that character because DC felt that it was an infringement on Superman, that Captain Marvel was too close to Superman to be allowed to be published. I love Captain Marvel. I love Captain Marvel. I think that he is a terribly underappreciated character. And they kind of, you can tell over the last few years, DC has made an effort to sort of include him in stuff and to try and feature him. And there have been a few tries at new ongoing Captain Marvel series or maybe retooling the character a little. And it's never quite caught on. But yeah, Captain Marvel would be at the top of my list too. One of my very favorite superhero characters. And one that has never quite, at least not in my lifetime, has never quite gotten the due that I think he deserves. Speaking of Captain Marvel, this one's from the Nameless Sir. Did you catch the DC movie timeline leak? In case you missed it, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, May 2016, Shazam, July 2016, The Sandman, Christmas 2016, Justice League, May 2017, Wonder Woman, July 2017, The Flash and the Green Lantern Team Up, Christmas 2017, Man of Steel 2, May 2018. What are your thoughts? It just feels like just the same thing that I felt that I always have felt when I read the news reports about the Batman versus Superman movie. It just reeks of desperation. And that's disappointing because even though I didn't think Man of Steel was a good movie at all, it was a big box office hit, and you would think that they would be feeling a little more confident over there at Warner about the superhero thing, about the DC Comics thing. But it doesn't seem like they are. It seems like they're just throwing shit at the wall and seeing if it sticks. And, look, I love Captain Marvel. I hope that the Shazam movie isn't fucking terrible. I hope that it's a good movie. I hope that it captures some of the spirit and the fun of that character. But, the track record of DC, other than the Nolan Batman movies, has not been great. And Man of Steel was not encouraging. And the fact that Man of Steel was a massive hit being what it was is not encouraging, at least not to me creatively, given my feelings about that film. So, we'll just have to wait and see. None of these movies even really exist yet. The only one that is even in production is Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. And the rest of them, as far as I know, are just theoretical at this point. I've never heard a word about them except for seeing their titles in this list. It's nice that they're making a Wonder Woman movie. It's nice. Okay, the question question has been, ever since they started talking about throwing every character you've ever heard of into this Batman versus Superman movie. People would say, well, how many more movies is DC and Warner's going to make before they finally just make a fucking standalone Wonder Woman movie? And if this list is accurate now, we know the answer to that question. And the answer is 4 more movies. And then Wonder Woman gets her own movie. So you get another Batman movie and another Superman movie. They're in the same movie, and a bunch of other people will be in that. Shazam, he'll get his own movie. Sandman, he'll get his own movie. And then, of course, we'll do the Justice League. And then Wonder Woman can have hers. Okay? So, Wonder Woman's going to get her movie. And it'll be 2 months after the Justice League movie comes out. So, she'll get plenty of attention there. It'll be a high-profile release. Don't worry about it. Roscoe McDougal. Steve, do you think summer vacation for U.S. school children should still exist in its current format? Or would a modified 12-month school year be more practical and effective? I don't know. I'm not sure if the problems in our educational system really have all that much to do with the schedule. I don't know how much we would gain if we just shortened summer vacation or went to a 12-month rotation instead of a 9-month school year. But we didn't really change anything else. There's lots of other shit about our education system that we could change without even messing with summer vacation that I think would make a bigger difference. Funding, especially funding for urban low-income schools or rural schools that don't have a lot of funding, that would be a big thing. Throw money at schools. Fund schools, fund libraries. That would be 2 of my priorities, especially if you give a shit about education. Pay teachers. Buy them the supplies they need. Buy them the best equipment they can possibly have. Focus on kids that are members of at-risk groups. Encourage girls who are interested to pursue majors in science. Encourage boys to read more fiction. There's all kinds of things that you could do, that you could target groups that tend to have problems in terms of their education. There's all kinds of problems you could address in terms of funding, in terms of prioritization, that wouldn't have anything to do with summer vacation. I really don't think summer vacation is the problem. Now, having said that, if someone came up with an idea for reforming public education that included changing the way we give students breaks in between terms or whatever, I'm not married to summer vacation either. I'm out of school. I don't give a shit whether they get summer vacation or not. I don't care. I'm not in school. I don't have kids. So, I really don't have a dog in the fight. But I do think that it's not quite as simple as, well, we need to get rid of summer vacation. That'll make a big difference. I don't think it's quite that. There are other things that we can do that would help. James Phillips. Steve, why do you think YouTube atheism is so fascinated with Saen Bugan? Most Christians I've talked to who have even heard of him find his arguments ludicrous and a little embarrassing. On a completely different note, what would happen if Batman lost his fortune? Would he still fight crime? Many thanks. I think the fascination with Saen is because he is basically a philosophical train wreck. You see someone like him, you hear his argument, you hear the outrageous smugness and entitlement in his tone and in that of his pal, his tag team partner Eric Hovind. And it's hard to believe. It's like, this can't possibly be serious. He can't possibly be saying that he's right, basically because he says he's right, and that we all know he's right. And if he's not right, then nothing makes. I mean, the whole argument is so childish and stupid and easily done away with that it's just fascinating. That it's like, where did this guy even come from? Why are we even talking about him? And that in itself becomes a mystery and becomes an object of fascination. So I think it's that. I think there's a train wreck quality. There's an inexplicability to even the relatively minor fame that he has achieved in the atheist community on the internet that is just baffling and fascinating at the same time. So I think that's it. And I think he's getting close to his expiration date. I think we as atheists have sort of done our bit. We've done our due diligence. We've entertained him enough and given him enough of a platform that we don't have to feel guilty or feel like, well, we're just silencing a voice that deserves to be heard. We've heard him. He has nothing interesting to say. He's just playing word games and trying to trap people. And, I mean, it's getting to the point where now it's like, okay, yeah, that's nice. No, actually, Sai, I don't want to debate you. Thank you. Have a nice day. As for Batman losing his powers, his money is his power, really. And if he lost his fortune, I think he would continue to fight crime. But eventually he would either get killed or die from some injury that he didn't have the wealth to treat efficiently, or he would get arrested and he would end up spending the rest of his life in prison because he couldn't afford a good enough lawyer. Detail bear on. Steve, did you see that on the WWE reality show Legends House, WWE wrestling legend Pat Patterson came out as gay after over 50 years, including a 40-year relationship? Any thoughts on the changing perceptions in and out of pro wrestling with this revelation, and Stone Cold Steve Austin's earlier endorsement of same-sex marriage? I picked up on the news from a gay news site, as I'm not a big fan of wrestling, and I was wondering if it was news, big news, or non-news in the wrestling fandom. The specific news of Patterson coming out wasn't really that big of a deal because everyone pretty much knew that he was gay already. He had never actually come out and said, I'm gay before publicly, but it was an open secret in the business. And once the age of the internet sort of came around about 15 or 20 years ago, and newsletters and dirt sheets, as they used to be called, became widely read and widely available through the internet to a larger number of fans, Pat Patterson's sexuality was pretty much always known. So the coming out of Pat wasn't a bombshell, although it was nice to see and good for him. I mean, I'm glad that he did. And yeah, I think the attitude toward sexualities toward gay folks in wrestling has progressed a little bit. It's still not really where it needs to be. I mean, the attitudes toward gays and racial minorities and women and a lot of other groups that have a history of being oppressed or mistreated still have a long way to go in pro wrestling. But they're better than they used to be. I'll just say that. They're moving in the right direction. And the fact, and really, one thing in wrestling's favor is the fact that Pat Patterson, in his private life, was gay and was known to be gay in the business for, as you said, 50 years, and was a main eventer in the 70s, and was a hugely influential backstage figure in the WWF during the 80s and 90s when it had its big boom periods. So there was always sort of a very influential voice coming from a gay man that was a part of the product. But yeah, so there's that, and I do think things are moving in the right direction. But they do still, as a wrestling fan, I can say honestly, they do still have a hell of a long way to go. Bagser 1. While rewatching Starship Troopers for the first time in years recently, I was struck by how, rather than the schlocky sci-fi movie I originally thought it to be, that there was a lot more going on underneath the surface than I originally thought when I first watched it. My question is, are there any movies that you had to reevaluate as being more intelligent, deep, or subversive on a second viewing that you had written off as being dumb or superficial in the first viewing? I thought about this question for a while today, and the best answer I could come up with is the way my feelings have changed toward Rambo. I still get everything bad that's said about Rambo, and I agree with it. I do think the Rambo movies, especially the sequels, the ones that came after First Blood, are schlocky and are just trashy, sort of dumb 80s action movies that aren't even well distinguished in terms of their style or their filmmaking. They're journeyman projects that have a certain crude, kind of campy appeal just for how bad they are. But if you watch First Blood, and then you also watch the last Rambo movie, the one that was just called Rambo, that was directed by Stallone shortly after Rocky Balboa came out. I think Rocky Balboa came out first, and then Rambo came out. But anyway, if you look at those two particularly, I think there's a lot about the Rambo character that resonates with me now that I never really thought about 5, 10 years ago. You know, I still don't really think of them as like legitimately great movies, although I do think there's a lot of really good filmmaking going on in the latest one, in Rambo. I think it's a really well-directed action movie. But you know, the idea of the disenfranchised veteran Rambo as a man who was sort of enlisted in a war that wasn't his war, and fought and lost friends and kind of gave up his life and then came back and was greeted harshly, and you know, couldn't find work and didn't have friends or family to fall back on. And just became this disenfranchised veteran. There's a lot about that resonates with me now when I watch that movie, even through the schlock and the cheese that, you know, a lot of that First Blood movie. I mean, First Blood has kind of been undergoing a little bit of a rehabilitation lately among critics, and I think to the point where actually I think some people kind of overrate it. Some people talk about it like it's a much better movie than I feel it is. But it does have some things going on in it that mark it as deserving to be considered a little bit more seriously than, say, you know, First Blood Part 2 or Rambo 3, which are just total action schlock. So I would say Rambo. Rambo the character in general, and also Rambo in terms of the first and the fourth Rambo movies. Something that I had to reevaluate. So I need to reevaluate that sound effect, because you know what it means. It means that it's time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Louis Saen 114. Who's your favorite teacher in high school, college? Reason? My favorite teacher in high school or college was my writing teacher. In my first writing teacher in college, Douglas Scott Hessler. He was my screenwriting teacher. He was just an awesome guy. He taught me a lot about screenwriting and about short story writing in general. That bit that I mentioned in a video a few weeks ago about how one of my pieces of advice to writers is to enter your story as late as possible. I got that from him. I think that's a great piece of advice. So Douglas Scott Hessler, great teacher and a great guy. Radical Bacon, do you have any secret talents? Actually, I'm secretly quite good at making YouTube videos. Patrick Dodds, Steve, of these dark existentialist stand-up comics, who is your favorite, and do you like the rest? Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, Bill Hicks, Doug Stanhope. I like all of them, but Carlin is definitely my favorite of those. And Lenny Bruce, I get for historical significance, but when I listen to Lenny Bruce's material today, I don't know, maybe it's the generation gap, but I don't find him as funny as the other guys on that list. But Carlin absolutely is my favorite, one of my favorite comics ever. Speaking of comics, Old Comic 1. Here's one you can have fun with. If you were to design a superhero, what powers would you give him or her, and what powers would you not want him or her to have? How would he get those powers? What would his alter ego be like? I actually came up with a superhero character when I was in high school, and it was named Vulcanus, like the god Vulcanus, the god of fire. And his power was that he could change the state of matter. I have no idea what that had to do with him being a volcano guy, but and his origin was linked to a volcano too, by the way. And he could change solids into liquids or gases and vice versa with the different states. That was his power. That was his deal. And then I think later on I revisited it in my 20s and changed the tone of it a little, and I thought I would want to make it more like lighthearted, more like a 1960s Stan Lee, Steve Ditko Spider-Man comic. So I don't know. It's probably fucking terrible. If I tried to do it today, it would probably be really fucking terrible.
You met a girl.
Huh? What?
Then you met a girl.
And then I met a girl, and I was like, I don't think I'm really going to do this superhero thing. TC the Unbeliever. Steve, do you find it annoying when one of your subscribers capitalizes random words in his question for no apparent reason? No, I don't. I don't think that's it's an odd question. Oh, I see what you did. You did it in your question. Seth Topper, lightning round question. What question is this one? Please answer in numerical fashion. Oh, Seth, do I have to go back and count all of these answers and questions? Okay, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yours is the 14th question, Seth. And actually, you can go back and count to see if it's not the 14th in the video you're watching. That means I cut some shit out, which I often do, because I'm a sneaky sumbitch. Sid Knight, hey Steve, do you always carry that pen in your shirt or only when making your videos? In either case, why? Why would I only have it in videos? Does it really look that cool that I would put it on just for the video? No, I'm actually that neurotic in real life. I always carry a pen with me, just in case I need to write something. It's only actually come up like maybe 3 times in my entire fucking life. But I have the pen in real life. Yeah, in case I need to write something down. It's stupid. I shouldn't carry it. There's no justification for it. Gianluca Bucci. I think you'll like this question, Steve. Who is crazier, moon landing hoaxers or the guys who think that there are cities on the moon and Mars? You know, that's tough because on the one side you have the hoaxers who don't believe the photographs that show something, that is the remnants of the Apollo landing sites that prove conclusively that the moon landings were not hoaxes. And on the other side, you have the guys who don't believe the pictures that show nothing there. Like to show there are no ancient cities or ruins there. So both people doubt clear, unambiguous photographic evidence. If I had to pick, though, I think that the people who think that there are cities on the moon and Mars have to be a little crazier. I mean, that's just nuts. That's like conspiracy theory mixed with ancient aliens stuff. It's just... it's too cuckoo. It's even more cuckoo than the moon landing hoaxers, who are incredibly cuckoo and just stupid people. Stella Lumia, ZOMG, you're talking about Godzilla, and it's proper Godzilla with Anguirus, Monster Island, and everything, and Toho. I feel so tragic in asking this, but as Mecha Shibes, would your next film battle be against Mecha Godzilla and or the Japanese SDF with all their funky new weapons? Ghidorah, or maybe Mecha Ghidorah, or something new? I would love for Mecha Shibes, especially if I were playing the character, if I were in the suit, as I made clear I would like to do if they make this movie. I would love for it to be against King Ghidorah. That's like, other than Godzilla, Ghidorah is like my favorite Toho monster. He is just so awesome. Ghidorah is the fucking coolest. And plus, he's Godzilla's archenemy, you know. So I could team up with Godzilla. It could be Godzilla. It could be like a 6-man tag. It could be Godzilla, Anguirus, and Mecha Shibes versus, let's say, Mecha Godzilla, Gigan maybe. Oh, no, here it is. The heel team is Megalon, Gigan, and Ghidorah. There you go. That's 3-on-3. That's your big final climactic fight in the Mecha Shibes second Toho movie. That's it. It don't get no better than that. Hey, that's it for the lightning round. That's it for the questions. Before I get out of here, I want to do a shout out. And the shout out this week is very close to my heart because this is a shout out to someone who gave me a shout out once upon a time that gave me a huge boost. Actually, this person gave me 2 shout outs, believe it or not. I got 2 shout outs from the shout out I'm going to give today. And of course, many of you may have guessed already. The shout out this week goes to Wildwood Claire 1. Claire is one of the greatest YouTube atheists that we have, I think. She is someone I just admire and appreciate so much. And it was such a thrill for her to shout me out twice when I had a smaller channel than she had. And it was such a boost to me, both emotionally and in terms of my ego and in terms of my subscriber base as well. How many of you guys watching me today subscribed to me initially because Wildwood Claire mentioned me on Coffee with Claire? I mean, a few of you at least. It was such a big deal to me at the time, and it's still a big deal to me today. And Claire, my eternal gratitude to you for giving me those shout outs. And I'm a little embarrassed by the fact that I have 40,000 subs now, but it makes me feel good because now I have an excuse for giving you a shout out in return. And hopefully some of my new subscribers who have come on board since you shouted me out before can discover your work for the first time. Because if you haven't watched Coffee with Claire, if you haven't watched her videos on geology or her videos taking on fundamentalists, they're awesome. If you don't know who Wildwood Claire 1 is, if you've never seen Coffee with Claire or any of her other stuff, you need to be watching that shit. You need to go to Claire's channel right now, check it out, and if it's your type of thing, which I suspect it is, if this is your type of thing, you should subscribe to her channel as well, because she is awesome, and I owe her a lot, and she's never been anything but gracious and a friend to me, and she's one of the good ones. She's one of the best of us. And if my increased popularity on YouTube has afforded me nothing else, I'm glad that it has afforded me an excuse to give a shout out to Wildwood Claire, because she deserves it. So go check her out if you are unlucky enough to not be familiar with her yet. That's it for this week. I will be back again next week to do this all over again, provided, of course, that you guys ask me some questions that I can answer, because in order for me to do this, you have to ask. So leave a comment. Look at me. You know what it is? It's this. I've been drinking this while I've been filming this video. So I take no responsibility. It's this. Leave a comment on this video. Ask me a question for next time. Ask me anything about anything. See, now that I'm into the regular spiel, I think I'm going to be okay. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will try to answer as many of them as I possibly can in the next episode. So until the next episode, take care, everybody, and I'll see you later.